Hey guys, tonight we're heading out across the vast, shivering grasslands of the ancient Mongol steppe. You're crouched beside a restless pony, your fingers stinging from the cold as you tighten the last. Strap on a saddle packed with everything you need to survive a journey that might last weeks, or you've barely slept. But that's kind of the point. You're a traveler now, a mobile speck on this endless quilt of wind-blown plains and frozen morning dew. There's no fanfare. No one waves goodbye. The wind just whistles like it knows something you don't. If things go sideways your entire short, chilly lifetime. The stars above are fading, and the horizon glows just slightly, cold and pale. Mongol horses are famously short and sturdy like angry little tanks with attitudes. Yours has a name you didn't choose. Probably something like Bites, stranger in the local dialect. Still, he's reliable. He doesn't buck, doesn't wander, and doesn't seem to mind the mountain of gear you've edges strapped to his back. You probably won't survive this. Inside, dried meat, a threadbare robe for layering, a worn prayer flag, a pouch of flint stones, and your bone sewing kit. It's utilitarian, like most things here. Even your saddle, with its high wooden pommel, is more scaffold than comfort. It's not just about riding. It's about blending into your mount, moving with it, like a soft, grumbling two-person dance. You've got a few bruises to prove you're still learning. Then it picks up, carrying the scent of ice, grass, and something a bit funky. That'd be the herd of yaks, a few miles away, probably. Or your socks. Tough call. Historians still argue whether the Mongol saddle was genius or torture, likely both. There's also your rolled felt mat cozy. If you squint hard enough, an extra pair of thick wool socks that you pray won't end up as bandages. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. You're one of them now, in a way. And with each passing hoofbeat, the hum of the steppe creeps into your bones. I love seeing where you're listening from. This is where the journey begins to feel real. Just you, your gear, and a horizon that never gets closer. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. And campfires and sudden snowstorms, there's just this, packing your gear and praying it's enough. Just because superstition is easier than explaining why you keep a pebble wrapped in silk. The pony snorts, shifting its weight as you swing one leg over the saddle. There are no roads here, no signs. Just instinct, memory, and maybe the vague hope you'll run into another rider who hasn't had breakfast yet and is willing to share. You pat his shaggy neck and glance over the horizon. Your breath mists in the morning air. The grass crunches under hoof as he starts walking. Mongols didn't travel light, not because they loved clutter, but because there were no pit stops on the open plain. If you left behind your water pouch, your skin scraper, or the precious bundle of dried milk curds, well, good luck finding a medieval Mongolian. Your first task before the sun truly climbs is to make sure nothing was forgotten. Swaying gently in the saddle, you begin to mentally tick off your supplies. First, the saddle. They're wide and low, made of thick leather. They creak when the pony shifts. You feel your knife at your hip, carved from horn and stone, sharp enough to skin a goat or slice dried cheese. As the pony lumbers forward, you adjust your seat. And then there's the wind. It comes low and quiet at first, as if testing your resolve. As you roll over a small rise, the land opens wider. Somewhere out there are other rider scouts, traders, maybe even the Khan's messengers. But before the big adventures, before the raids, or battles, or diplomatic exchanges, before the scrolls, oh, and you brought your lucky rock, not because it works, A lone falcon cuts across the sky above. Your pony snorts again. The sun climbs another finger's width, and you ride on. Your pony's pace is steady, now clop, 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 eating up the endless step, one fuzzy hoof print at a time. You shift a little in the saddle, feeling the morning stiffness settle into something more tolerable. Inside is your breakfast. Strips of Karug sun-dried meat from your last butchered goat and boards, which is even drier, tougher, and somehow even more respected. Mongol boards isn't exactly melty. It's more like chew dash until dash your dash jaw dash aches cuisine, but it's calorie dense, light, and never goes bad. You could forget a bag of it for 6 months in a dusty saddle pack and still eat it when you find it again, though. You might need a few teeth replaced afterward. Either way, it worked. These steppe raiders could go days without cooking, just snacking on high protein. No fuss fuel, no campfires meant fewer trails for enemies to follow. Just meat, motion, and mischief. Your belly grumbles, but you're already ahead of it. Basically, prehistoric protein bars with the texture of sidewalk chalk. You reach down and fish a leather-wrapped parcel out of your saddlebag. The water gurgles gently as you refill your water skin. The leather smells ... gamey, but it holds. There's a faint dust plume. Far in the distance another traveler, maybe, or a herd, or both. You squint. No movement. Your eyes drift back down to your bag. Mongol containers were often made from animal stomachs, bladders, or skins because if you're already butchering the thing, why waste the packaging? Just preserve chunks of lamb fat. For when the energy slump hits hard, Mongols didn't shy away from calories. The steppe didn't offer many second chances. Add some hot water, and boom, you've got a greasy meat broth that passes for soup. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The texture is enthusiastic. You don't have hot water right now, though, so your jaw keeps working. You steer slightly east. Curiosity is for people not hauling 3 types of ancient dairy in their saddlebags. Roasted millet, like ancient popcorn, but somehow less exciting. Mongols sometimes carried it as a dry grain to be cooked later, or just popped in the mouth raw for something to chew on. It's like birdseed with ambition. It's not glamorous, but it gets the job done. Dried cheesed curds, known as arul, were also a staple. Salt was currency, seasoning, and livestock treat all in one. Hard to tell with horses that grew up in windstorms and have the emotional range of a brick. The horizon doesn't change much, but your pace does. You're full, at least in the medieval. Chew your way the sense. A pinch here, a trade there. In some regions, people even dipped cheese into salt before eating it. Crunchy, squeaky, salty cheese. The bedtime snack of conquering empires. Imagine something sour, hard enough to chip a tooth, but weirdly comforting. You suck on one like a lozenge. It squeaks between your teeth. They'd travel in family groups or small bands, each member responsible for part of the food stash. One carried the meat, another the chi, someone else the alcohol, more on that soon, and a fourth handled the sheep. Because yes, they often brought their food alive. As you gnaw on a strip that tastes vaguely like leather cured in wind, your mind drifts. Mongol warriors carried boards crushed into powder too. Historians still argue whether this diet made Mongols more resilient or just permanently grumpy. You tear another chunk free, offering a piece to your pony out of habit. He declines with a sassy headshake. Smart horse. And meat wasn't the only thing packed. Mongols loved variety when they could get it. And for dessert, air-dried curd cakes. You think about the logistics. Most Mongols didn't ride alone. But for now, you're on your own. With a pouch full of prehistoric jerky and the kind of chewing fatigue normally reserved for beavers, you take a break, letting the reins go slack as your pony picks his way over a shallow stream. You wipe your hands on your robe, already dusted with grit, and look out over the plain. Wrapped in linen is a block of fat. Yes, just fat. It's not fancy. No seasoning, no spices. You re-wrap it and tuck it back inside, where it hopefully won't melt into your spare socks. There's one more snack pouch, slightly hidden, tucked near your water skin. You toss a few grains into your mouth, chewing slowly. And here's something unexpected. Some riders carried small bags of salt, not for seasoning, but for trading. You glance at your pony again. He's unbothered, or he's pretending. Your stomach quiets. For now, you feel the early warmth of the sun settling on your shoulders through your layered robe. Just ahead, a crow circles something small and unmoving. A gentle breeze picks up again. You shift your weight and ride on. You'll reach down and feel for the wineskin nestled against your saddlebag. Its outer hide sun-darkened, its inside sloshing softly with something alive in every sense of the word. Airag fermented mare's milk. It's lukewarm now from riding in the morning sun. And when you uncap it, a sharp, sour scent hits you right in the nose. Ah, yes. Breakfasts, drink of champions. The taste is, well, let's be honest. It's fizzy yogurt left in a barn too long, with just a whisper of vinegar and wet horse. But after the third or fourth gulp, your tongue stops protesting, and it settles into something oddly refreshing. Slightly alcoholic, slightly tangy, wholly traditional. You take a small sip. Mongols milked their mares and poured the milk into large leather sacks or wooden churns, shaking and stirring for hours until the magic did their thing. Some riders would hang a fermentation bag from their saddle, letting the ride itself help churn the contents. Talk about multitasking. Airag wasn't just a novelty. It was fuel, hydration, nutrition, and mood enhancer all in one fermented hit. You lift the wineskin and give it a gentle shake, honoring that mobile milkshake tradition. Milk, Dosan tea, keep long, unfermented especially, on a hot journey so, turning it into Eragwasan tea, optional. It was survival science. You made your tea the night before and drank it at dawn. The gourd goes back in your pack. You'll find more water later. That got you a little tipsy. Rivers wind across the steppes like silver threads, but they're fickle. Some are icy clear, others stagnant and risky. Mongols could read the land, smell the breeze, listen for frogs, anything to find clean water. You're still learning. You crouch beside him, unpacking your small clay bowl and pouring the last drops of arag in for a mid-morning pick-me-up. Not glamorous, but you pack a few pats of it into a side pouch. Fire fuel. It's lightweight, smells like last Tuesday, and burns hot. You'll need it for tea or warmth later. A small stack goes a long way. Around you, the land buzzes faintly dry wind, chirping insects, and the distant honking of some angry geese who clearly didn't get the nomad memo. Or maybe you're just getting used to it. You grin. That'll be your emergency ration for next week. You once mistook a salty puddle for a lake and spent the night rehydrating in reverse. Grazing time's over. You swing back into the saddle, your stomach swaying slightly from the fermented breakfast and the jostling ride. Historians still argue whether Airag was more cultural or practical. But for the average Mongol, it was both. You cap the skin and hook it back to your saddle, wiping your mouth with your sleeve. Your pony flares his nostrils at the smell. He's judging you. You can feel it. Just that ribbon of crushed grass behind you, marking your slow progress across a land too big to care if you're late. Besides irug, some families made kumi, another fermented milk variant. Though the terms often blend together now, it's not exactly English breakfast, but drop a chunk into hot water, and you'd get a dark, earthy brew strong enough to dissolve your worries or, at least, dissolve your dried meat. Some Mongols even mixed it with butter or salt. Not for flavor, mind you, but for calories and body heat. It's like drinking beef soup through a tea straw. Strange, maybe? Effective, absolutely. The alcohol content was low, but drink enough and you'd definitely feel bold enough to challenge a goat to a staring contest. But fermented milk wasn't the only beverage option. You also packed a small gourd of brick tea, crushed and pressed into solid blocks. Your gourd is cool to the touch. You give it a shake, but it's empty now. Water, of course, is a precious gamble. You'll ride on, the sun creeping higher. Your mouth tingles from the airag, or maybe from regret. You pass a low ridge where grass grows thick, and you dismount to let your pony graze. You spot a dry pile of something useful. Animal dung. Beside the dung, you'll find something stranger. A lump of curdled mare's milk cheese someone left behind. Now sun-dried and fossilized, you whistle softly, and your pony trots back toward you. The road or lack thereof stretches forward again. No trees, no hills for miles. You drink one more sip of airag, and smile. The sourness fades a little. Either way, you ride on. You feel the familiar tug of the reins in your hands, the creak of leather under your weight, and the steady rhythm of your pony's hooves padding over the earth. As the wind shifts, you pat the side of your saddlebag not out of nervousness, but routine. There's something comforting about knowing your gear is still exactly where you packed it. Today, you're especially aware of one detail. Your extra, it's coiled tightly in a goatskin pouch tucked near your left hip. Away from moisture, sun, and curious hands, a snapped bowstring mid-hunt or mid-buttle is a Mongol rider. Worst nightmare like a knight losing his sword or a modern traveler losing signal and snacks. It's carved from the leg bone of a goat, polished smooth, capped with a stopper of twisted leather. Mongol men mended their own gear, often while riding, and there was zero shame in being handy with a needle. In fact, a well-mended cloak could mean the difference between comfort and frostbite when the wind gods got cranky. But archaeological digs have unearthed needle cases, tiny shears, and whetstones tucked into the most unexpected places. One guy had a thimble sewn into his hat. Talk about headgear with multitasking potential. You wave a lazy hand at it, it doesn't budge. Inside, your needle's bone, bronze, and the occasional sliver of iron, if you're lucky. Sitting sideways in the saddle, you uncap your bone case, pull out a sliver of metal with a hair-fine eye, and thread it with sinew pulled from your pouch. The stitch is ugly but solid. You grin. Nobody's judging your needlework out here except maybe the crows. This stuff's meant for bowstring repairs or emergency sutures because, yes, when your cousin takes an arrow through the thigh, you don't stop and look for a hospital. You so mutter a curse and keep riding. It's not glamorous like swords or gold, but it's the difference between resilient and ruin. She also believed goats could talk to spirits. So, grain of salt, it's worn from years of sharpening hoof. This stone could talk. It would scream from exhaustion. Small, sharp, reliable, like most things you carry. You spit on it, swipe your blade across, and tuck it back under the flap. And sinew, curved and fierce, small enough for horseback use, but powerful enough to punch through armor. And temperamental, one wrong stretch, one brush with damp weather, and the string could snap like a dry reed. Mongo bows were a work of genius. Composite masterpieces of wood, horn, That's where your backup comes in. Add hot water, and it melts into sticky repair putty. You've patched everything from sandals to arrow quivers with it. Mongol duct tape basically smells worse, but works like a charm. Mongols often made them themselves, drying and stretching the sinew for days, then braiding it tight until it hummed with potential energy. Think of it as ancient bungee cord, except sharper and way more personal. It is made of animal sinew usually, deer or shephand, twisted with the kind of care usually reserved for embroidery or vengeance. And while you're thinking about bows, your fingers drift to the small bone needle case strapped across your waist. You're no seamstress, but you've stitched up more robes, gloves, and saddle straps than you care to count. You remember something your grandmother used to mutter while sewing. Dante, trust a man with clean robes is either rich or deadweight. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders carried full toolkits or just relied on shared supplies within the clan. You pause your ride to inspect a fraying bit of stitching along your boot cuff. Speaking of crows, there's one perched on a low rock ahead, eyeing you with the calculated judgment of a tax official. Back in the saddle, you check the rest of your gear. There's a whetstone, rough and round, for your knife and arrowheads. You've also got sinew thread, longer than the ones in your sewing pouch. A pouch of tendon glue flakes sits just under your spare socks. And finally, your tiny oar, used for punching holes in leather or occasionally prodding someone awake at camp if they snore too loud. There's something quietly comforting about all this maintenance gear. You sling your needle case back into place and give your saddlebag a final. Proud paddles may not win empires, but without them, even the fiercest rider is just a tired guy with soggy boots and a flapping cloak. You click your tongue, the pony starts moving again, and the wind brushes your face like an old story told for the 100th time. The wind sharpens as midday approaches, and you feel it sneak through the seams of your robe. Time to layer up. Not dramatically, no superhero swirls, no slow-motion montage. Your legs buzz from the rider. Little numb, a little stiff. Wide flaps that overlapped in front, secured with a sash, and always room for hidden pouches inside the lining. If a Mongo looked bulky, it was probably because he had his pantry, sewing kit, and half a cheese wheel tucked in his armpit. You open the side bag and pull out your outer robe, a heavier deal, thick and sun-warmed. It smells like yak, smoke, and the sweat of a dozen past journeys. In other words, perfect. Just the practical, time-tested ritual of wrapping yourself like a very determined cabbage. He also claimed to have arm-wrestled a bear. So take that with a pinch of salt and maybe some These hats weren't just warm, they marked identity. Some tribes favored tall, dramatic headgear. Others preferred rounded felt domes. Yours is patched, faded, and distinctly you're cocooned in wool and felt, layered like a very well-seasoned onion. You ease your pony to a halt and slide off the saddle with a grunt. The knot sits snugged just under your ribs. You feel warmer already. It felt hugging your body like a practical hug from someone with zero emotional availability. Some even had ceremonial caps, worn only during rituals or important visits. You've got yours tucked deep in your bag, wrapped in red cloth. It smells like dried incense and sheep. Or maybe that was just his sales pitch. Either way, it's held up well. Your base layer is sheepskin, coarse but insulating. Mongols didn't waste a scrap. Every hide was tanned, stitched, or turned into something useful. Your mittens are mismatched, but they work. Your layers are your shelter, your tent, your sleeping bag, your travel pouch. You don't need a closet. You wear your world on your back. Mongols loved layering. Linen, then wool, then felt, then fur. Not for fashion, but survival. Nothing is purely decorative, though a few beads dangled from your sash, carved from bone and dyed with crushed berries. One's shaped like a fish. You don't know why, but it's comforting. It's wool, hand-woven, and still smells faintly of the fire it dried beside. You've used it as a nap, pillow, bandage, and sling. Once, you used it to tie up a chicken that wouldn't stop squawking during a border crossing. True story. Mongol clothing was simple, but deceptively brilliant. The deal wasn't just a robe, it was a long sleeves that could be tied or stuffed. Some say colors indicated rank: red for leaders, blue for warriors, and so on, but others point out that dyes were a luxury, and practicality almost always trumped presentation. If it kept the wind out and didn't trip your horse, it was good enough. You swing the deal around your shoulders and tie it tight with a wool sash, wrapping it once, then twice. Your inner robe is linen, thinner and softer. A rare import gifted by a traveling merchant who said it came from a market where spices smelled like dreams. The tops are stitched with woolen thread and patched more times than you can count. The soles are leather, but you've reinforced them with scraps of hide from a wild goat you still remember wrestling. He won the first round, but you're the one with the boots now. Historians still argue whether Mongol robes had uniform styles or varied wildly between tribes. You reach for your fur-lined boots, brushing off a bit of dry mud. Under the robe, your leggings are wool, and your underwraps are linen strips, twisted up your calves in the style your uncle swore was the only way real men wrap legs. You adjust your hat, a peaked cap with fur trim that flopped slightly to one side like it just woke up. And here's a quirk. Many Mongols carried a change of hat, not because they were vain, but because hats soaked up sweat and wind. As you ride, you feel the robe flap slightly with each breeze, but the wind doesn't bite anymore. Your pony doesn't seem impressed, but he's fluffier than a yak in winter, so he's fine. You pass a low stream and catch your reflection. A bundle of cloth and fur with only your eyes showing. You look intimidating, or at least insulated. In your side pouch, you've got leather mittens lined with rabbit fur. You slip them on, flexing your fingers as the light softens into afternoon. You think about your scarf, wrapped twice around your neck and tucked into your collar. Everything you wear serves a purpose. You tug your robe tighter as the wind picks up. Clouds stretch like pulled cotton across the sky. It's not just about warmth. And as you ride, bundled against the breath of the land, you feel ready for whatever the steppe decides to throw at you next: snowstorm, sandstorm, or an unexpected goat with an attitude problem. You nudge your pony forward with a soft cluck of your tongue. The land rolling out ahead in endless waves of golden brown. No trees, no milestones, just open sky, trembling grasses, and the occasional startled marmot that scurries into its burrow, like it knows you're not in the mood for company. As you ride, your mind drifts not out of boredom, but habit. Mongols didn't travel with maps the way we imagine today. Their silhouette against the sky is familiar, like sleeping dogs lined up in a row. You've heard the story 100 times. Those are the Herding Brothers Hills, named after a tale involving two stubborn shepherds, a misplaced yak, and a lightning storm that was probably exaggerated by every single grandparent. There were no scrolls tucked into saddlebags, no painted compasses or tidy trails inked in red. Not in a poetic, stargazing kind of way, but in a Dante fall into a canyon in the dark kind of way. He pointed out Orion's belt once, then promptly called it the Archer-S pants, and insisted it was a sign to always carry a second pair. The kind where an entire river's course was memorized as part of a love song. Folded deep in your pack is a knotted string, a mnemonic device of sorts. Each knot represents a landmark, a turn, a decision, It's a primitive route, planar breadcrumb trail made from horsehair and habit. The mountains became characters. The valleys were betrayals. That's how you remembered the terrain you lived it through tales. You relied instead on a complex web of memory, landscape, and elder-taught lore. You remember that after the brothers, you ride 2 hours toward the Jawbone Hill, which really does look like a broken skull if you tilt your head and squint through exhaustion. It's a family shorthand, developed after one too many detours. You only use it in emergencies, though writing things down feels oddly clunky-like. Trying to explain a joke after it lands, you rub his neck and mutter a soft thanks. He knows the land, too. Horses remember routes, sense danger, smell water. Either way, you'll approach slow, hands visible, eyes steady. Your partner's out here, not just rider and mount. From there, the path forks, depending on your destination, east to the salt flats, west to the trader's camp, or north if you feel like freezing to death. Others preferred song fragments or riddles, half poems that triggered the next directional cue. It wasn't precise, but it worked. When you live in a land where the wind resets every trail overnight, flexibility is better than certainty. You glance west to a cluster of low hills, a stream, maybe a small river. It curves to the left, just as you expected. You hum a fragment of an old travel song under your breath, one that supposedly helps you stay oriented. Whether it works or not is debatable, but it helps pass the time. You nod to yourself, pleased. You've never been lost, only temporarily uncertain. No need for signposts when you know the scent of a certain moss means water nearby, or that the way the wind hums in the grass can mean an approaching ravine. You just listen, watch, trust. This is how you navigate. A child raised on horseback beneath an open sky docen, tea-knead parchment when the landscape is the book. You follow shapes in the earth, the way rivers carve turns in memory. Mongols had a remarkable mental GPS, trained from childhood. Historians still argue whether this was instinct or learned skill, but it's likely both. You remember how your uncle taught you to watch the stars. You smile at the memory. There were no written maps in your training Yunli campfire stories. And yet, you do carry a few things. Tucked inside your sash is something even more valuable. A scrap of birch bark, scrawled with symbols only you and your cousin understand. Some riders carried small painted stones, each color and shape linked to a location. Your pony stumbles, slightly, nothing dramatic. Just a reminder that the steppe is a living, breathing map. You crest a hill and pause. The view rolls out below an empty sweep of grassland cut by a narrow ribbon of dark water. You start the descent. The breeze has softened, the sun slipping behind a few lazy clouds, and now you smell smoke, faint, distant, but real. You adjust your course, slightly eased. Someone's got a fire going. Could be friendly, could be not. You smile. You don't need a map. You've got memories in your feet, coordinates stitched into your clothes, and a pony who remembers where the salt lick is. And that's enough. The smoke on the horizon fades behind you, not a threat, just a lonely herder's fire and your back to riding through silence again. Or, rather, a different kind of noise. Wind against your hood, leather creaking with your movements, and the occasional indignant grunt from your pony when a pebble hits just wrong. You feel the weight of something small and warm beneath your robe, tucked close to your chest in a faded scrap of red silk. You don't have to check. You know exactly what it is. It's your family spirit pouch. Everyone carries something like it, whether they admit it or not. You're ever cautious. Tuck it near your collarbone, where no wind can reach and no stray glance can question. a small cloth bundle holding the ashes or tokens of your ancestors' dust from a grandfather's hearth, the feather of a hawk your sister raised, the tooth of a beloved old dog, lost, untethered, a scrap of fur, a pinch of ash, a sliver of old bone. Those things whisper that you're not really alone. You pause, even when there's nothing but horizon ahead and behind. The contents vary. The purpose does not. You keep it close because ... well, sky worship, ancestor veneration, nature spirits, they all blurred together. A tree could be sacred, a river could hold a grudge, and your great-grandfather, he could absolutely haunt you into cleaning your camp properly. Out here, it's easy to feel small. He's in that pouch now, at least the memory of him. His voice lives there. So does the echo of your childhood home, long since abandoned. The pony huffs. The road stretches again, long and bright. Given that you haven't been eaten, you choose to believe it's working. But for the people who carried them, such debates would have seemed silly, more decorative than functional. But you've kept it for years. But because they remind you who you were, and who you hope to still be, of warriors who carried their families' ashes to the edge of the world, then let the wind take them. Of children who tied tokens into their braids, believing it gave them voices in dreams, supposedly forged from the broken shoe of a messenger who once outran a lightning storm. It rattles faintly when you ride too fast, like it's warning you not to get cocky. There's wisdom in caution, even if it sounds like Dad. You don't need a doctrine when you've got a mother, braid folded in cloth, to remind you who you are. Some Mongols wore their spirit pouches like amulets, others stitched them into the inner linings of their coats. Just silent reminders. You dismount, approach slowly, and reach into your pouch. From it, you draw a tiny pebble, carried for just this reason. You place it atop the cairn and mutter something wordless. Historians still argue whether these bundles were religious artifacts or merely tokens of grief. You think of your father, silent and firm, teaching you to mount your pony without touching the stirrup. As you ride, you pass a low cairn of stones 3 high, roughly stacked. These are step markers, left by travelers for the dead or the lost. No names, no dates, just a breath. Some riders whisper prayers, others sing. You just close your eyes for a moment. The wind does the rest. Mongol spirituality wasn't written down in neat rules. It was felt in bones, sung in wind, smoked in the ashes of old fires. You remount, feeling a little lighter, though the pouch still presses against your heart like a steady thumb. And it's not just ashes in there. You also carry a sliver of antler, carved with a sun symbol. It came from your cousin, who swore it kept wolves away. There's a tiny horseshoe charm, the size of a coin. These small things matter out here, not because they're magic. You shift in your saddle and tug the silk bundle higher, snug beneath your scarf. And as the hours pass, you remember stories told at night. You've never heard voices. But once, after a particularly long ride, you swear your father's voice told you to stop drinking from that puddle. You ignored it. You regretted it. The wind picks up again, curling around your hood and cloak. You adjust your grip, blink against the grit, and you ride on, with your ancestors at your heart, and 1,000 miles of memory beneath your boots. The sun is sliding westward now, throwing long shadows across the steppe. You start thinking about where you'll stop for the night, but not yet. There's still some light, still some ground to cover. Sacred stuff always smells a little like the kitchen. It's carved from birch, shaped like a squat little figure with raised eyebrows, and a smile that's seen better days. His name depends on who you ask. To some, he's a sky god. To others, He's just a familiar face from old stories, someone who watches over horses. Or maybe just make sure you don't break your last bowstring at the worst possible time. And besides, it's nearly time for a quick, ritual small pause in your otherwise stubborn, forward momentum. Then, from your belt pouch, you take a pinch of dried milk, curds are all, crumble them between your fingers, and scatter the crumbs in front of him. You reach into your saddlebag and pull out a folded bit of felt, wrapped around a tiny wooden idol with a soot-smudged face, and faint traces of sheep grease on the base. This is your portable altar. Modest but potent, the breeze twitches a blade of grass near where it sat, like it's saying thanks. No chanting, just a quiet moment, a gift. You place him gently on the grass, brushing dust from his stubby nose. A flint, a piece of steel, and a tightly rolled bundle of dried grass and dung. Yes, dung. Don't wrinkle your nose. You'll love it when the sun drops below freezing. A moment to center yourself. Inhale something familiar, and exhale the day's silence. Even warriors get twitchy when they go too long without speaking to the sky. That's your offering. Probably you've even got a tiny iron incense burner. A luxury, really. You light it on special nights, letting the sharp, peppery smoke chase away mosquitoes, bad dreams, or any sneaky spirits who might have followed from that last abandoned camp. Strips of cloth tied to tall poles, catching the wind like whispering banners. Some are red, some blue. One suspiciously made from an old robe sleeve. It's a spirit post, left by other riders passing through. Were they spontaneous, intimate, or just formalities repeated out of habit? Either way, they were frequent. Mongols paused often not to worship with drama, but to acknowledge the land. You don't own the steppe. After all, you borrow it. You consider tying one of your own strips to the pole, but not today. You haven't earned that yet. Or maybe you're just feeling superstitious. Not towns, just cloth in the wind, tokens on stone, and the knowledge that you are not the first, and won't be the last. Some had 2 flags, strips of cloth tied to sticks and planted in the ground near camp to invite blessings. Others packed sun discs, amulets, or bits of sky-blue stone meant to draw the protection of Tengri, the eternal blue sky. Nothing dramatic. Mongols carried gods in their pockets, not grand, towering idols, just compact figures and icons, ready for the road. You mutter a few lines from a travel prayer, half-remembered and slightly misquoted. It still counts. Historians still argue whether these roadside altars were personal acts or part of a larger ritual system. You finish the offering, tap the idol's little head for luck, and wrap it again in felt. And now, it's time for you to do something less spiritual, more practical. You rummage into the side pack and check your fire kit. You don't light it yet, but you test your flint. 3 sparks, clean and bright, good enough. And tucked near the fire kit is your tinder pouch, which also contains an extra bit of felt-wrapped wool soaked in animal fat, kindling's best friend. Your rituals aren't just about belief. They're about rhythm. As you ride, you spot something ahead. Future flags, fluttering from a hilltop cairn. You steer toward it and ride past slowly, offering a nod. There's comfort in seeing signs of others, not cities. You press on, with your altar wrapped safely at your side, your hands steady on the reins. And above you, Tengri the wide, blue sky just watches. The sun hovers low now, like a tired eye drifting shut. Shadows stretch long across the land, and your pony's steps grow slower, more deliberate. No trees, no rocks, nothing but space and quiet. Perfect. He knows what's coming. You do too. It's time to make camp. You steer toward a patch of slightly raised ground, a dry knoll ringed by sparse grass. Just enough elevation to avoid night mist, and just low enough to hide from curious eyes. Yours is a miniature version, just enough for one. Maybe two, if you're okay with elbowing someone in the face all night. It's made of collapsible wooden struts, tied with rawhide, and its canvas covering is coated in sheep fat for waterproofing. You assemble it slowly, your fingers moving from memory. You swing your leg over the saddle and land with a soft thud. You hang your spirit pouch near the entrance, not outside, but close enough that the wind can find it. Your knees groan, but they're used to it. You scoop the dried pats into a sling pouch, then stack them into a tidy little pyramid near your tent. Not glamorous, but it burns hot, steady, and even smells a little nostalgic, like home. If you grew up next to a particularly enthusiastic barn, it's not a feast, but it's enough. The places where the ground felt wrong, or where wolves howled too close, the nights spent under sudden rain, the ones with no fire at all. You eat slowly, chewing each bite like it owes you money. You remove the saddle carefully, setting it on its side to let the pony's back cool. His fur is damp, his flanks twitching. You strike flint against steel once, twice, until sparks leap into your wool-soaked tinder. It catches with a whisper, then a crackle, then a familiar glow. You tug the comb through the wind-tangled strands, muttering under your breath as it snags. You secure the cover, weigh down the flaps with stones, and step back to admire your work. Not bad for a mobile shoebox. You murmur a soft thanks, then rub him down with a coarse felt cloth from your pack, while he grazes, nuzzling the sparse turf like a man searching for lost coins. You unpack your camp kit. It's all there, tucked neatly inside a rolled felt mat bound with braided leather straps. First comes your travel yacht. Others believe they're fires left by gods, too lazy to clean up. You just know they're old friends, quiet, distant, and always watching. No, not the towering, full-sized palaces used by Mongols. Didn't always travel with full. Many slept in open air or under cloaks, but when time and space allowed, they brought small, tent-like shelters, something between a yacht and a hide teepee. These girlets, as some scholars now call them, were perfect for scouts and riders like you. Historians still argue whether these mini-shelters were standard military issue or cobbled together by clever nomads with extra goat skin. The debate matters less when the wind bites and your eyebrows start to freeze. You finish tying down the last flap and set your gear inside. Bedroll, robe, food, pouch, fire kit. Then you gather dung fuel. You passed a herd this morning, so you know it's nearby. You build a fire ring with a few stones you dig from under the topsoil. Clearing a circle, checking for dry brush, you sit cross-legged beside it, hands out, palms absorbing the heat. Your pony settles nearby, finally still. You pull out your evening meal, dried mutton, crumbled and a few strips of wild onion gathered 2 days ago and wrapped in bark. As you sip the last of your brick tea, warmed over the fire in a copper cup, you think about all the camps that came before. This is one of the good ones. Your robe smells like smoke now. Your hands are warm. Your belly, while not full, is content. You take out your bone comb, not because you care about vanity, but because it's habit. Mongols believed uncombed, hair-trapped bad dreams. And then comes the best part. You lie back on your mat, cloak pulled over your chest, and stare upward. The stars blink awake one by one. Some say they're holes in the sky where spirits peek through. The steppe is silent now, except for the crackle of fire and the soft snort of your pony dreaming of something chaotic. And you exhale slowly, the breaths curling into the night. This camp is temporary. Every camp is, but for now, it's enough. dawn slips over the horizon with the stealth of a cat. Its light brushing the inside of your eyelids until you're forced to open one eye, then the other. Your bones protest, your back grumbles, and your mouth tastes like a convincing argument against dried onions before bed. But outside the little tent, the world is waking too. You hear your pony give a long sigh, followed by the wet chewing of grass. He has survived the night without wandering off or picking a fight with the wind, so that's a win. Your saddle is light but sturdy, with a wood and leather frame designed to distribute your weight without irritating your pony. It's covered with wool felt, soft by age and dust. You stretch, unwrap your robe, and pull on your boots, still a little damp around the heel. The air is crisp, cold enough to sting your nose, but not enough to freeze your firestones. You step outside and begin the sacred Mongol ritual of mourning, sorting your stuff back into perfect, chaotic order. Either way, you've shot enough to feel the muscle memory hum in your shoulders. It's survived rivers, drops, and at one time you used it to swat a particularly aggressive goose. And a few blunt tips for small game, or sending messages that sting without breaking bones. Some arrows are fletched with eagle feathers, others with buzzard. You don't discriminate. Flight is flight. With a draw weight, most modern archers would weep over, and the added advantage of shooting accurately from horseback. You draw it part way from its leather sheath, checking the edge. Still keen. You've kept it honed with a whetstone and respect. The handle is wrapped in plaited hide, sweat-stained and familiar. It's little wonder they became feared across continents. Mongol etiquette says a man without a knife is either lying or cursed. You're neither, hopefully. You've cleaned them in rivers, oiled them under stars, and once used your dagger to carve a message into a tree when your cousin wandered off with both horses. He still says you exaggerated the wording. You say he was lucky it wasn't in arrows. You unstring it to check for stress on the limbs. Everything looks fine. You restring it slowly, carefully, like waking a sleeping tiger. A well-thrown loop could catch a galloping enemy, yank him from the saddle, and teach him a very sudden lesson about gravity. Every item has a place, but that place often changes based on mood. Whether you remembered to tie the flap down last night. Food pouch, fire kit, spirit bundle, bow, sewing kit, all accounted for. Everything secure, everything balanced. The bow rests against your thigh, and your saber's hilt nudges your hip like an old friend, reminding you it's still there. You start with the saddle. You check the leather straps, massage a little tallow into the creases, and inspect the metal stirrups for wear. You pack your gear with the precision of someone who lost something important before and refuses to do it again. But your most important items now are your weapons. Your bow gets the first inspection. Composite, curved like a crescent moon, and bound tightly with sinew and horn. Mongol bows weren't made to look pretty. They were made to hurt feelings at 300 meters. Historians still argue whether Mongol archers trained daily from birth, or just had exceptionally strong arms, and even stronger parenting techniques. Next, your quiver. You check each Aratha broadheads for cutting, the bodkins for armor piercing. You slide them back in, each with its own place. Your saber comes last. It's a curved blade, not overly ornate, but sharp enough to convince people to rethink their tone. Beside the saber is your dagger, small enough to hide, but large enough to solve a disagreement. You keep it in your boot. And finally, the lasso. Yes, the rope and gold warriors weren't just about stabbing and shooting. They were master. You check the ropes, knots, and recoil it with care. It smells of dust and old effort. Weapons aren't just tools, they're part of you. Your pony's ready now, tail swishing, eyes bright. You strap your gear to the saddle, testing each knot. You mount, settling into place with the comfort of 1,000 repetitions. The leather creaks. The wind lifts your scarf. The camp behind you is just flattened grass now. Smoke-stained stones. A footprint in the dirt. You don't look back. You ride. The morning air is sharp, but your pony's pace keeps you warm. You ride with a rhythm now, gear secure, limbs loose, eyes scanning the horizon with the ease of someone who est long given up looking for signs, and instead feels some in your bones. But something gnaws at your stomach. Not a bad omen. Just ... breakfast. You don't bite it so much as negotiate with it. Grinding the piece between your molars, like your teeth, have a score to settle. Some pieces you carry are years old. Some might be older than your pony. And the taste, somewhere between chalk, sour milk, and stoic regret. You rummage in your side pouch and pull out a slab of Ural sun-dried curd so tough it could probably stop an arrow. Ural dried meat, hard bread, and wild herbs, when luck allowed. Not exactly flaky pastry, but when paired with tea or dipped in milk, it becomes divine. Sometimes berries, sometimes wild garlic. You once mistook a patch of bitterroot for something edible, and spent the next day experiencing every regret imaginable at high speed. You sip sparingly. No ice-cold rivers nearby, but you spot a cluster of white tufts in the distant scare tents, low and round like sun-bleached mushrooms. A family camp. You dismount before reaching the edge of camp, raising your hand slightly, palms out. The universal sign for not a threat. Probably you'll cry when it runs out. She was right. You sip. It's hot, earthy, and oddly comforting, like drinking a hug that's wearing a sheepskin vest. You have exactly 2 pieces left. You consider them, then close the pouch with reverence. Not today. Ural is not a luxury. It's a necessity. Long-lasting, lightweight, and resistant to even the most aggressive bacteria. You nod respectfully. She nods back, then gestures you forward. Her toddler appears at the flap, stares at you like you're the strangest goat he's ever seen, then disappears again. Still, it fills you. Kind of. The air smells of buttered tea, wool, and boiled fatter perfume only the steppe could appreciate. You tuck it carefully into your side pack, resisting the urge to devour it on the spot. You sit cross-legged on a thick felt rug while she prepares tea, her movements practiced and wordless, but you know you'll save it for when the land gets mean again. Mongol riders didn't feast on the road. They survived. You leave a small piece of your own Ural on the trapement of sorts. She smiles, doesn't touch it. Tucked deeper in your pouch is something far more precious. A hand-stitched food bag filled with Bertzeg deep-fried dough, golden and dense. Historians still argue whether Bertzeg was everyday travel food or a festival treat. But when your grandmother pressed it into your hands before this trip, she said, "Take it." She listens without judgment, then gestures toward your water skin. Need met need. Generosity met journey. That was enough. You pass it to her, and she fills it from a large clay urn in the corner. Instead, you tear into a dried strip of mutton jerky, salty and stiff as leather. It takes effort to chew, but that's the point. It slows you down, gives you something to do while the miles blur past. Mongols often ate like this, one hand on the reins, the other elbow deep in a food pouch, teeth doing the hard work of civilization. Your water skin is lighter than it should be. You'll need a refill soon. You veer slightly toward it, slowly, carefully. Mongol hospitality is famous, but caution is tradition. A young woman steps from one of the gars, squinting in the sun. Inside the ger, it's warm and dark, the smoke hole letting in a single shaft of dusty light. She pours from a battered kettle into a shallow bulsutai sai, milk tea, salty and oily with a thin film on top. She offers you a small plate of cheese, bits, and hard-fried dough, and you accept with a quiet nod. You exchange a few words where you're from, where you're headed. This is how you replenish on the step. No shops, no receipts, just human courtesy wrapped in ritual. Before you leave, she gives you something unexpected. A small pouch of roasted millet, lightly sweetened. Historians still argue whether these exchanges were economic, spiritual, or cultural, but again, for the people living it, that question barely matters. You remount, wave farewell, and ride on. Your belly is warmer now. The tea sits heavy in your gut, the taste lingering like smoke on wool. You feel a little more human again. And that pouch of millet, you don't say it out loud, because it will. The sky has begun to shift again. What was crisp blue now deepens toward a paler, more washed-out hue. You ride beneath it, blinking against the brightness. Ahead, the land dips gently into a shallow valley that breaks the monotony of the grasslands. It's not much, but out here, even a few feet of descent feels like discovering an entire geography. And nestled in the dip, there it is, a watering hole. His lips slap the surface with enthusiasm, tail twitching in rhythm. Your elders taught you through stories, songs, and the occasional pointed scolding not to waste a single drop. The pond water is clean, with only a faint greenish film around the edge. You know the signs. No bloated fish, no strange smells, no weirdly aggressive frogs. You're safe, probably. You squat nearby and splash cool water on your face, letting it shock you awake, then drink in short, measured gulps. More pond than stream, ringed with pale stones and churned mud. The kind of place every rider dreams of when their water skin runs dry. Your pony snorts as soon as he smells it, picking up speed in a sudden, hopeful jog. You let him. Whether humidity, even a bad sneeze, could ruin one. The step wasn't kind to ill-maintained gear. You'd say both. You've sung to yours more than once while re-wrapping its grip. Does that count? Probably not. You pull out your travel sewing kit. Nothing fancy, bone needle, waxed sinew thread, a scrap of hide for patches. You stitch slowly, knees creaking, one eye on the horizon. Still felt important. Everything where it should be. Except they bounce once, twice, then sink with that lovely little plop. It's pointless. It's soothing. It's yours. You dismount and lead him to the edge, letting him drink first. You repair, reflect, and occasionally skip rocks for no reason other than it reminds you that the land is still yours to touch. Someone was here not long ago. You've patched tears in mid-blizzard, resoled boots with goat hide and desperation, and once turned an old harness into a makeshift tent rope during a sandstorm, and the wind behind you, teasing at your hood like a mischievous uncle. The gear never lasts forever, but your fixes make it last enough. You stow the kit and stretch your back, which makes a sound like a distant tree cracking. Mongols relied on these natural springs and seasonal ponds. No well digging, no aqueducts. You simply had to know where the water lived. They know something you don't. Maybe it's just lunchtime for them. Maybe they're watching your pony for signs of limping. Either way, you nod back, respectful but unimpressed. You refill your water skin, swishing it once to rinse the stale taste out. His grazing break is over, and he'd very much like to return to walking somewhere, anywhere. You'll need to soak and rebind it before it's useful again. You tuck it back carefully and remind yourself again to always check strings during mealtimes, not just during emergencies. That's a lesson you only need to learn once, or 3 times. Nearby, you notice signs of earlier visitors, scattered charcoal from an old fire, even a broken arrow shaft poking out from a bush like a half-hearted toothpick. You sit down and let your pony graze. While he crunches the sparse reeds, you check the gear again. Everything intact. Your spare bowstring is fraying. You frown, pull it from its case, and inspect it more closely. The sinews dried too much. Mongol riders often carried multiple bowstrings, wrapped in oiled cloth and stored in bone tubes or small felt rolls. Historians still argue whether composite bows require daily attention or weekly rituals. As the wind picks up slightly, you crouch down and begin a short task, mending your boot seam. Every rider is their own leather worker, tailor, and emergency blacksmith. While you work, you hear birds overhead, long-tailed hawks, circling lazily. You'll finish the seam and flex the boot. Not perfect, but good enough to keep stones out. Before you go, you take a moment to do something oddly comforting you. Pick up a few round, flat stones and skip them across the pond. This is what Mongol riders rarely talked about, but always knew. Time exists differently out here. You move forward, but you also pause. Your pony comes back to nudge your arm. Impatient, you gather your things. One last look at the watering hole, your brief oasis. It will dry up soon. Everything does. Eventually, you mount again, settle into the saddle, and give a gentle nudge with your heel. The steppe opens before you once more. Miles to go. Food in your pouch. Water at your hip. The wind changes. Not a storm, not yet, but that subtle shift in direction and smell that tells you the weather is about to rethink its choices. You glance upward, reading the clouds like a nomadic, high, flat, and streaked across the blue, like they've been brushed on by a hurried artist. Rain, possibly. Cold, definitely. You adjust your cloak, tucking it tighter around your shoulders, and reach back to check the strap on your weather roller. Bundled hide sheet, oiled and waterproofed, meant to cover your gear and your bones when the sky forgets how to behave. Mongol horses aren't just vehicles. They're survival partners. It slides through your sleeves, fingers, your scarf, whispers little doubts, like, did you pack that extra rope? What's clear is, they knew how to fight cold with cunning hollow fur boot, double-layer felt trousers, and sinew-threaded mittens that could hold a bowstring without numbing your fingers. What about the millet? How many days until the next camp? Not in sheets, but the kind of sparse, sideways drizzle that seems to prefer ruining moods over soaking anything meaningful. It stings when it hits your cheeks and collects on your eyebrows like nature's tiniest hats. It's both nuisance and warning. Your pony has carried you across plains, through sudden hail, once even through a locust swarm. You still don't talk about that one. Everything becomes slippery, squeaky, and vaguely dramatic. You both huddle there, silent and damp, listening to the tick of water on your saddle and the occasional, judgmental squawk of a bird overhead. But you're still warm, still dry where it counts. That's all a rider needs. You don't need it yet, but knowing it's there is like traveling with a friend who's grumpy but reliable. Your pony chews too, slowly, his ears flicking with displeasure. The clouds break slightly, revealing a strip of sky like torn parchment. You pat his neck and murmur, I didn't plan this either. Beneath that is your woolen tunic, and under that, a band of wrapped cloth around your torso, part for warmth, part for posture, and treating the sky like a grumpy landlord who can't be evicted. The earth smells richer now, wet grass, stirred soil, the echo of distant hooves from somewhere far off. Mongol clothing isn't about fashion, it's about layering, smart, wrapping tight, just enough to tell you that, even on cold days, the land is never entirely empty, and making sure nothing flaps so hard it lifts you off the saddle like a bad circus trick. You urge your pony to a steady trot. He seems to sense the tension, 2 ears twitching, steps more deliberate. As you ride, the wind begins to whistle a thin, rising sound that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere. Still wrapped in wool and weather and the quiet pride of someone who hasn't tea. Let the storm win not today. The leather thong holding your knife sheath is tight. Every little detail matters when the weather decides to test your patience. Then again, you're out here in the middle of a wet plain with only a scarf between your breath and the elements. So, maybe not. Of children taught to track snowflakes like footsteps, counting direction from the wind's sting. The temperature dips. You stop briefly to dismount and check your outerwear, layer a sheepskin-lined coat. Heavy but essential. Historians still argue whether Mongol riders had standardized winter gear or adapted it tribe by tribe. You draw a thin scarf across your nose and mouth. It smells faintly of goat, smoke, and home. Better than frostbite. And just in time, the first drops arrive. You ride on. Rain on the steppe isn't romantic. There's no shelter except what you bring, and the wind has no decency. You steer your pony toward a rock outcropper, small ridge you spotted earlier. It's not a cave, but it offers a windbreak. You chew another piece of a rule not because you're hungry, but because your jaw needs something to do besides shiver. And then, just like that, the rain stops. It doesn't end it, just gives up. The wind dies. You emerge from your ridge with a squelch and continue feeling the dampness creep up the hems of your trousers. Your thoughts wander as you move. You remember stories told on cold nights, of warriors who faced blizzards barefoot, of women who rode through sleet with arrows tucked beneath their sleeves to keep them dry. You wonder if those stories were exaggerated. You check your gear one last time. The waterproof pouch where you keep your spare tinder is dry. The bone button on your coat is still looped. Mongols didn't fight nature. They adapted. You don't conquer the cold, you negotiate with it. Wearing layers like armor by late afternoon, the wind has quieted completely, and a faint warmth returns. You look ahead. There, just over the rise, is the shimmer of smoke from another camp. Not close, not urgent, and with that sight, you press forward. Still riding. The horizon shifts again this time, not with weather, but with movement. It starts small, then the shimmer resolves into distinct shapes. A caravan, riders, wagons, animals loaded down with bundles wrapped in oilskin and wool. You slow your pony instinctively, watching as they draw closer, their approach cautious but not hostile. One figure lifts a hand in greeting, a universal gesture among steppe travelers that says, "We see you, and we're not in the mood for drama." You raise your hand in return and nudge your pony forward at an angle, not directly toward them, but in the gentle arc that signals intent without intrusion. As you close the distance, you take in the group, a dozen people, maybe more. 2 elderly women sit on a wagon platform, gossiping audibly. He hands you a cup of salted tea before even asking your name. You drink. It's sharp and warm and instantly grounding. A pair of younger riders flank the lead, alert, scanning for threats or lost sheep. The small talk flows like a steady stream, familiar and soothing. He introduces himself as Orca, a caravan leader ferrying textiles, spices, and medicinal herbs from one market town to another. His wagons are lined with raw silk brick tea and the faint perfume of crushed dried flowers. There are oxen pulling carts, pack camels shifting beneath their loads, and one tiny dog barking like it owns the entire plain. You re-waved over by a middle-aged man with a sun-darkened face and a robe patched so many times it might be a textile map. He squints at you through the wind and gestures for you to dismount. You do. Hospitality among Mongols is both instinctive and ritualistic. No questions come first, just the offer. Drink, food, fire. Every stop was a thread tying the web of the empire together. The truth, as usual, is somewhere in between. You're invited to join, and you accept, grateful for the warmth of extra fire and the buzz of nearby voices. Trade and trust went hand in hand on the step, and you, Dante, need a ledger to know that sharing tea under the same sky meant something. Even solitary riders like you were part of that fabric, intersecting briefly, then weaving away again. Only after that does he speak. Someone offers you a spare cloaker, layer too long and too wide, but blessedly warm. You wrap it over your shoulders like a tent, and feel yourself relax in the company of others. Where are you headed? How long have you been riding? Do you need repairs? Advice? A better scarf? And your belly is full for the first time in days. Laughter echoes softly through the camp. You hear a lute being tuned badly. Someone is trying to sing but keeps forgetting the words. You answer in turn. They're headed east. You're not, but for a brief moment your paths overlap, and that's enough for community. Someone offers you a hot dumpling meat. By the smell of it, though you don't ask what kind. Mongol dumplings are thick-skinned, hearty, and contain enough calories to restart a hibernating bear. You eat it in 4 bites, resisting the urge to lick your fingers. Barely. The group talks as they cook more. You hear stories. A boy who claims he saw a sky fox, a woman who insists her uncle once raced a falcon and won, a merchant arguing about the best way to store dried horse intestines without them smelling like disappointment. Mongol caravans were more than just commerce, they were mobile lifelines, connecting remote settlements, families, and ideas. Historians still argue whether these roaming bands had central oversight or operated independently, guided by mutual agreement and survival instinct. As evening approaches, the caravan begins setting up camp. You help unload some heavy bags of millet, earning a few raised eyebrows when you lift one with surprising ease. That night, you sleep near the edge of the wagons, wrapped in wool, the scent of horses and hot broth filling your nose. Your pony dozes nearby, his breath rising in slow clouds. And for a few hours, the world feels gentler. Not easy, never easy, but less sharp. The wind doesn't bite. The stars blink with curiosity. Before sleep claims you, Orca sits beside you and asks one last question. Do you ride to find something, or to leave something behind? You smile, not answering. He nods, like that's the right response either way. The fire crackles. The night deepens, and in the company of fellow travelers no longer alone you drift off beneath the eternal sky. You wake with the soft clatter of hooves, the dull creak of wagon wheels rolling over packed grass, and the smell of reheated mutton wafting from someone's cook. The caravan is stirring, blankets rolled, embers poked to life, quiet chatter replacing sleep-heavy silence. You rise slowly, limbs heavy but rested, blinking against the early haze. A little boy offers you a fistful of dried berries, and you thank him with a sleepy smile. You return the borrowed scarf. Thank Orca again for the warmth and the stories. He clasps your shoulder and presses something into your palm. A tiny leather charm, soft with age, knotted with red thread. The morning is slow, generous in its pace, and you feel no urgency pressing against your ribs. For once, but you are not part of this caravan. Not really. You pass one shaped like a half-moon, another with a line of carved notice, maybe a grave, maybe a border, maybe just someone's way of saying, I was here once. Historians still argue whether they marked clan boundaries, sacred spots, or just the good places to stop and relieve yourself. Either way, you take notice. You pause. You remember. You take the chance to unwrap a small cloth bundle and finally open the millet pouch the woman from the Gar gave you. It smells faintly roasted, toasted by memory more than fire. You chew slowly, every grain a little victory. a strip of blue cloth fluttering from a collapsed yacht frame. Not destroyed, not ruined, finished, moved on. So you gather your gear once more, tightening straps, folding your bedroll with care, brushing dust off your cloak. For smooth hooves and clever roads, he says. His thoughts are on the next watering stop or the possibility of finding that one bush with the sweet-tasting leaves you stumbled on 2 weeks ago. There's a scattered playing board knucklebones still in place, a circle of flattened grass, a piece of wood carved into a crude horse, perhaps a child's toy. You run a finger over it, then set it back where it lay. It's a library of footsteps, a gallery of ashes, a constellation of tiny, stubborn lives blinking against the wind. You wear it without complaint. You nod, tuck it into your belt pouch, and swing onto your pony. The others wave, some already moving eastward. You spur west. Once more, you're alone. The quiet of solitude returns slowly, like a familiar old coat. The pony's pace tells you there's still time. No need to rush. No need to worry. The land stretches quiet ahead of you, unmarked and unchanged, the sky hanging pale and endless above. By midday, the land opens into rolling green flats, dotted with stunted shrubs and the occasional half-buried stone marker signposts for those who know how to read them. So will the wind and the faded tracks of those who passed long before. Mongols left these markers everywhere. Some meant things, some didn't. You won't chase it, but you'll notice it. Just as the people behind you will one day notice the fire ring you leave tonight. A small herd of wild goats watches you pass. One stamps the ground with an unimpressed hoof. Your pony ignores them. The sun is high now, but the breeze is kind. The wind is gentler now. It hums through your cloak like a lullaby whispered in a forgotten dialect. The creak of leather, the jingle of metal, the faint bird song far in the distance, all of it fades into the background like music dissolving into silence. You crest a small ridge and pause. Below, stretched out like a painting, is another camp, but this one is abandoned. Ash-cold fire rings. A broken pole. You walk your pony through it slowly. You wonder who camped here? Traders? Hunters? A wedding caravan? You dismount and explore gently, like a guest arriving late. This is the rhythm of the road. You come, you stay, you leave, and someone else follows. It's tempting to linger, but you feel the itch again, the tug of wind, the draw of distance. You remount. Ahead, a dust line on the far horizon. Another a group of wild horses. It doesn't matter. The steppe isn't empty, and you're part of it now. You ride on, as the sun leans westward once more. Your pony's hooves fall into that familiar rhythm. Steady, nearly inaudible against the grass. You ease back in the saddle, letting your shoulders sink. Your hands loosen around the reins. Your breath slows. The gear at your side no longer needs checking. The bowstring is secure. The food pouch rests quietly. This, here, is the peace, not of stillness, but of motion that asks nothing from you. The road will be there tomorrow. So will the sky. But for now, you ride in soft silence. The air cools. The grass whispers, and your eyelids grow heavier with every breath. The camp you'll make tonight waits for no one, and yet somehow it's already waiting for you. So rest your eyes, let your thoughts drift with the hooves beneath you, steady as heartbeat, quiet as sleep. You are riding still, and everything you carry, your gear, your rituals, your breath, your peace moves with you under the eternal, forgiving sky.